Hi. So today I'm going to be talking about an issue I've had with setting up Unity cameras using Netcode. This video is an extension of CodeMonkey's Netcode tutorial, and it's just meant to be supplemental material to make setting up player controllers easier. I will link CodeMonkey's Netcode tutorial in the description, as well as the new input system tutorial he made, because I'm also using the new input system for the character controllers. So, to go over the issue, so let me build and run it. So, at this point, if you've watched CodeMonkey's tutorial for setting up netcode, I specifically am using the client authoritative setup, and I got up to that point for my work because I'm not doing servers. So to show it off, when I just host and spawn in the object, it works perfectly fine in first person. There's no issues with that. The issue comes when I add a client. So the problem here is the client is in control of the same character, and it's also controlling the same camera view, as you can see. So the client is affecting the host here with their camera view, which is not what should be happening. Whereas when we're on the host, you can still move the character and everything, but you get no camera view. So the issue with that is in Unity, when this is running, the way I have it set up, it is assigning the camera through the inspector with just drag and drop. So the issue here is the player doesn't know what cameras they own and can access. So what will happen is the main camera view for the game will default to the most recent spawned object. In this case, it would be the client's first person camera. So the fix to this is to check first if the player that's spawning in is the local player and that they have access to that camera, so that they have their own unique camera that will not affect the rest of the players in the game. And as you can see with my prefab, it has two cameras. The third person camera is a child of the parent prefab object here, and then the FPS camera is a child of the model right here, which has the player inputs and the player controller. So the reason this is done is because the FPS camera, as you can see where it's positioned, will be right here, and it will move with the player because that's their view, and it'll be controlled by mouse input or by controller. And then for the third person cam, it will be positioned up here and will not be attached to the model because we don't want the camera to follow the rotation of the model. We just want it to move independently of the character here, which is why I set up this follow cam script, which you feed it a transform, the player's transform, and then you have your public float variables to affect where it is in this, like how much it's offset and how much it moves with that offset, and as well as the field of view. So I have the check for player function here. So what it's doing is every late update, it's going to call this function, and the transform position of this camera will be the player's transform dot position plus the offset. But that's for setting up the cameras. So now that we've set up the first person camera, let's build it and test that. Okay, so now when we run it, if I show the host, you can see that the first person view works just fine, but we already established that before. So let's test with the client. So now, as you can see, the client's camera is independent of the host. The client has their own camera that is unique to them, that only they have control over. And it will not be sending that to the host. And the host as well has a unique camera that does not send anything to the client. So they each have their own unique cameras and they don't share a camera view. So that's setting up for first person. So I will now be showing the setup for third person as well. So specifically with my script, the first person and the third person camera can be swapped by just checking this boolean. If you want to see the script specifically where I do that, it's right here. And then this is just the movement script for third person movement. And then for first person movement. So now that I've swapped it to third person view, yeah. So this is the third person view. The follow cam doesn't have the player assigned yet because we're assigning it at runtime rather than assigning it in the inspector because we want the unique assignment for each player controller. So to do that, I'm using the public override on network spawn. So what this does is it'll run as soon as the network object gets spawned, which would be whenever the host or client button is clicked. And then when it spawns, it'll check if the player is the owner of that game object and if they have control over the cameras. And then it will assign the transform of this player to the follow cam player variable so that this will have something to check that it can run. So to show that real quick, now if we run host, to see that the third person camera is following the player here and maintaining their center position. So now let's build and run it and make sure it works both client and host side. So I will hit play. I'll host, and as we can see, camera view is perfectly fine here. And now when we run the client's camera is independent here. It does not affect the host. It is its own unique camera to the player. And we can see the same with the host. And the benefit of this is with the way I wrote my script, if I were to swap to first person here, the first person view still works just fine, and it is unique to the host here, Whereas with the player, they're still in, or with the client, they're still in third person view. And they are independent of each other. And so if I were to swap back to first person or third person, still, it's only this view. So that's just what I wanted to go over really quickly. Again, this is supplemental material, just an add-on to what CodeMonkey showed off in his netcode. It's more specific for doing player controllers, and this is tailored for if you want the player to have the option to do either first or third person. But I showed the setup for both doing third person and first person if your game is just that one camera view. This is the easiest way I've found to set this up, and it's and I thought it would just be helpful to people because when I was setting this up, it took a lot of reading of documentation as well as forum posts to see what people were doing. And the issue was a lot of it was using either add ons or pre written scripts or packages outside Unity. This, what I'm doing here, is done with um, all default Unity packages, and it it's just simpler to do that for me for what I'm doing. So hopefully this helped. I just wanted to show a more modern version of it because a lot of the stuff that people were showing was depreciated or wasn't specifically tailored for first or third person, or just didn't show it in a modern version of Unity, so it was harder to set up. So, once again, hopefully this helps. The netcode and input system links will be put in the description. Good luck coding.